right, good afternoon, and thank you for coming out today. Sadly, we are here today to discuss the loss of one of our historic buildings here in Aurora, the Masonic Temple that was ravaged by fire during the overnight hours. It's always bittersweet to have such a significant loss of a historic structure in any town, as it chips away at the very essence of a city. We are very grateful, however, that there were no injuries or loss of life to civilians or firefighters, and that is thanks to the diligence of our fire department. Let's give them a huge round of applause for their efforts. As one who was born and raised in Aurora, and a Mason myself, this building holds a special fondness for me. Not only do I remember driving by it countless times, admiring its majesty as a child, I also attended events and meetings there as an adult. And certainly I can only think of pride of the Jerusalem Temple Lodge number 90 Masons when they raised $200,000 to build this structure in the early 1920s. The story is told that there were nearly 1,000 Masons in the lodge at that point, and it was the centerpiece for Masonic activities for the area. This temple went on to be added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1982, was sold and had a new life for the next 25 years by serving as housing for nonprofit organizations, a meeting space for community activities, and most recently, a banquet facility before closing its doors just over a decade ago. As Aurora is currently undergoing what is being called a redevelopment renaissance, where vacant yet historic landmark buildings in Aurora are being brought back to life with new businesses and residents, certainly the Masonic Temple has been in our conversations as a prime place for redevelopment. Unfortunately, that has come to a conclusion today. And after nearly 100 years, the historic Masonic Temple has seen its final day. I'm going to first ask our Fire Chief, Gary Krenitz, to give an overview of the fire, and then our Development Chief, John Curley, to provide the next steps for the site based on the events of last night. And then we'll open it up for questions. Chief.
Good afternoon. I'm Fire Chief Gary Krenitz. Approximately 10 p.m. last night, a call came in by a bystander to 911 that they saw a fire on the upper floors of the Masonic Temple building. Fire crews arrived shortly thereafter to find a well-progressed fire in those upper floors to this brick and stone historic building. We know that historic buildings are dangerous for firefighting and dangerous to firefighters. There's many reasons for that. The decision was made early that we needed to go defensive in these operations, that we needed to not enter into this building. The fire was too well far progressed. At this point, we did go to a third alarm last night on that. We brought approximately 35 firefighters to the scene. 3 ladder trucks went up and deluged it throughout the night. As I stated earlier, the building is unique that this 5th floor had very few windows. So yeah, we did have to go through some interesting tactical things to let the fire burn through the roof a little bit, just for us to even get access to the water to put the fire out. But that did get accomplished, and at approximately 2 p.m. today, the last fire crews were able to leave the fire scene. Unfortunately, in the area, you do still smell some things smoldering, so residents know that the fire is under control. It's just some small minor stuff to not concern yourself with at this time. As far as the fire investigations going, we'll not be completing a full fire investigation at this time due to that we can't safely get fire investigators into the building. We will be working with the city and other officials to get fire investigators in there to conduct a fire investigation. Right now, the utmost priority is to keep people safe, keep our firefighters safe and our investigators safe. So at one point, once we can get in there, we'll do that. ATF has also been in town. They've offered their assistance with fire investigation should we need it. At this time, I'll turn it over to John Curley to give some historical perspective of the building, and I'll be available for questions afterwards.
Thanks, Mayor and Chief. Again, my name is John Curley. I'm Chief Development Services Officer for the City of Aurora. As Chief mentioned, right now, safety is our key concern. We have deployed a fencing contractor to secure a perimeter around the building, making sure that no one gets close enough to the building to be harmed by any collapse or further collapse of the building. That, I believe, is underway right now, actually, on site. We have also contacted, have been contacting demolition contractors to pursue demolition of the building to make it safe for the neighborhood. Currently, the perimeter that we've set will leave 2 city streets closed for an undetermined period of time. That will be Lincoln as well as Benton. When we get the contractors for demolition deployed, we'll have a better idea and time frame on when we can open the streets back up.
As I said, this was an unfortunate circumstance and a huge loss of historic building here in the city of Aurora. But we'll do our best to keep our community safe and to make sure we go forward with determination of how we're going to dispose of that building. Any questions from the media?
Earlier today, some families had to be moved out of their homes. Is everyone back into their homes as of now?
Based on the location and proximity of the homes to the fire, only one family will be displaced from their home, and that family has found their own lodging. We as a city were prepared to offer assistance, but they found their own lodging as they have pets, but only one family has been displaced.
Can you talk about what's going to happen with this demolition? Do you have a timeline? How are you thinking about that?
John?
Oops, I'm sorry. So we've expressed the immediacy of the need to make the site safe to the demolition contractors. I expect it will be at least a couple weeks long. There is a more pressing need on the front end, to be honest with you, the damage that was done on the 5th floor. I think if you walk the site, you'll notice that the masonry on the above the 5th floor up to the cornices, or what would have been an eave on a building, those have been displaced. The steel expanded, the superstructure of the steel expanded when it heated, pushed the walls out on the top. So that will be the first thing that they focus on. That may be done partly by smaller equipment that can get a little closer to the building, and they'll bring larger equipment in to pull the building down. It might be done in 2 phases, depending on how we get the bids back and the availability of the contractors as well.
A couple weeks until you can start, or it'll take a couple weeks?
It'll take a couple weeks at least to demolish the building.
It'll take a couple weeks to demolish the building?
Yep.
So when are you going to start that process that you were talking about?
We're hoping to start sometime soon, like tomorrow. We're trying to get some numbers back from some contractors so we can get moving to make the place safe.
Mr. Mayor, you kind of hinted, you've been to that building, you're a Mason yourself. Your feelings about losing this structure in your city?
As I said, losing a iconic building like this in any city, you know, is a blow to us and our community. You know, our very fabric as a city that has so many old structures. We're an old city, 180 years old here in the city of Aurora, and we have a number of structures that are that age or much older. And to lose one of them in this manner, it affects us greatly. And we're just hoping that we can look at the silver lining here and just continue to look toward protecting our community from while demolishing this building and keeping everyone safe.
There have been rumors that there were maybe squatters in this building. Can you elaborate on that?
I don't have any information.
My name's Keith Jackson. I'm Deputy Chief for the Aurora Police Department. In the last few years, we've responded to 10 calls to that building. Some of those calls have been for trespassing, some for defacing of the building within. But in terms of reports or us responding for any squatters, we don't have any record of that.
Were there people in there taking pictures yesterday or something like that? Have the police been able to talk to them?
So after the fire started, it was brought to our attention that there were some posts on social media that someone had entered the building and had taken some photographs. We are aware of that. The investigators are in contact with the individual, and that will be part of the investigation going forward.
Were they allowed to be in the building? I'm sorry, were they allowed to be in the building?
I can't answer that question.
Have you made contact with the building owner?
we have had contact with the building owner.
And is there any indication of foul play or suspicious causes?
That's a question that I would leave for the investigators. At this point, there's no indication.
How difficult, this might be for the fire chief here, but if the building comes down, how difficult would it be will it make it more difficult to find the cause?
Obviously, our hope would be that as we demolish this building, we could do it in correlation with the contractors as they can make it safe for us to get in there. Yeah, it would not be advantageous for us just to collapse the whole thing in. It would make it far more difficult and far more labor intensive, but we would still have to do that. Our hopes would be that we could do a progressive, like Mr. Curley stated earlier, a couple different phases on that, and then we could get in there and actually do the fire investigation then.
Do you have a working theory yet? At least a jumping off point, what you think could have happened?
No, I don't. Fire investigations go, we got to rule everything out, so we're going to look at everything.
There were no storms or anything like that.
There were no storms in the area.
Chief, it seemed like
Yeah.
the water that was being poured on the building kind of stopped for a while around 11:30. You know, is that standard procedure? 'Cause it was smoldering, the fire seemed to be out, but then the fire came back again. Is that?
So that's what I described about some of the unique features of that building, and we could not get water to where the fire was burning under the roof. Roofs are designed to keep water out even if it's high pressure. So by us just spraying water down on the roof, it wasn't doing any good. We had to allow the fire to break through in a few areas that we could then get the hose streams in there to put the rest of the fire out. And that's what you saw if people questioned that throughout the night. We had to do that on a couple occasions where the roof structure remained. It was just too dangerous to put firefighters up there and try to put that fire out. So it was a means to an end, you know.
Mr. Mayor, you had mentioned possible redevelopment. It sounds like you weren't right around the corner from redeveloping this particular piece of property, but was there anything kind of in the future that like, oh, that might be a neat building for?
Absolutely, we had conversations about redeveloping, you know, many of our old structures. As I said, we're an old city, 180 years old. Many of our buildings are that old as well. And this was one that definitely was on our radar to redevelop.
Or specifically something, I mean, did you have something in mind, or?
We didn't have anything in particular in mind, but just a redevelopment opportunity.
Mr. Mayor, was there ever a thought that this building could have been saved, and what was the tipping point, or did you just know immediately that there was no hope for the temple?
You mean since the fire?
Right.
Well, yeah, since the fire and the destruction that it caused, it's unlikely that, no, it's impossible that it'll be safe. It's unsafe.
Mayor, the city's had some spent a lot of money on some big tear downs over the last several years. Is this, how does this work? Is the city gonna have to pay for this? Is this the building owner? And also, well, you guys have to remediate this. A lot of the cost has been that you have to remediate first before you can tear it down. Is that a factor in this situation?
Yes, remediation will be a factor as part of the demolition costs. Right now, it appears the city is going to step in and do the demolition of the building, and will likely leave the building when we're done. It does not appear that the property owner either has an interest in repairing it and or has the wherewithal to get the demolition accomplished.
So when you say in the demolition, will this be like some past demolitions? Will this be greened? Will this be basically a vacant lot when it's done? Is that how this works?
Well, it kind of ties back to your last question. The remediation, because essentially what would normally happen in a building like this is you do the remediation while the building's safe and standing. You do asbestos abatement, you do lead abatement. We don't have the opportunity to do that in this case. So they'll be under the special provisions that are afforded by the EPA and the IEPA. They will be, those conditions for demolition will be followed by this contractor, including some air sampling at the property lines. Primarily, the demolition process will be a wet process to keep any airborne particulate on the site and in the basement. And because of that, circling back to your question, we'll be removing everything, and it'll be a green grass site when we're done.
Oh, okay. Have you got a cost estimate yet on this?
No.
Too early.
Question. Had you received calls about debris coming off that building? I don't know if I know at all in the past.
Yes, in fact, the city, even under a past owner, the city had stepped in to knock portions of masonry off the building in the past, and then leave the building for those costs as well.
Is power still out to some of the residents in the neighborhood?
Approximately a couple hours ago, all power was restored to everyone in the neighborhood.
So around 10 o'clock was the first call for the flames. Do we have any idea when the fire may have started? I'm sure it's part of the investigation. But...
No, I will just tell you, not having been in there, I don't know what combustibles were burning and what the fuel load was. That gives us a indication of the time frame based on the volume of fire. But what I can tell you is that at 9:57, that the upper floor of that place was well going. So if that's any indication.
Chief, Fire Chief, is there
Yes, sir.
any chance that you can get in there before demolition work has to start?
No, I am not going to allow anyone in there. Safety is paramount at this point. I can't predict that building. If anyone's going to go by there, you see the waves in the building, you see the cracked mortar and all that up there. It's not worth risk to any of my investigators, any police, any ATF to be in that structure.
So to know the cause of the fire is far less important than the safety of your men, your women, your...
At this point, yes.
Any additional questions?
Are there fears that the building could collapse before demolition gets underway?
Certainly, I can't predict that at all. You know, we could have a storm that comes through, wind that blows. That's why we're putting up a perimeter with a collapse zone with fencing. We're going to have police posted out there. Our emergency management agency is going to have lights out throughout the night to make sure people stay away from the structure.
And just to clarify, will the person that, or the family rather, that had to leave, will they have to be gone for 2 weeks? Or will they be able to get back into their house?
They're not going to be able to be in that house until we can make it safe for them to return to the house. It would be silly for me to allow them to back in their house when there's a potential for that to collapse.
So it could be 2 weeks?
It could. It could be that we could get that wall down tomorrow. I can't speculate on that.
Sure.
And I'm assuming the streets will have to be closed during all the demolition and everything. It's awfully close to them there.
Yeah, there'll be a plan. There's going to be some fencing in place. There's a plan in place that John could explain to you. Well, there will be.
And we've got detours already.
Got
planned.
detours planned already cited out there. Yeah.
Talk about the detours.
I think Ken knows more about it. But we have set a detour plan in place and are implementing that as we speak. Again, the streets that'll be impacted are Lincoln and Benton.
Any additional questions? All right, well, thank you guys for coming out to this media briefing. We appreciate it.